and calling them toxic as if her fans, because KTV is a Caitlin Clark fan. She's my favorite basketball player to watch, male or female. Point blank, period. Now she's calling us toxic for saying the obvious about the sabotage that was going in this league and how this woman has been targeted since before she even stepped foot in it, all while Stephanie White wants to ignore the facts of what the other players in this league have done, from disrespecting fans, starting fake racial.
From the very moment the story broke, everything flipped on its head, because what came out of Stephanie White's mouth sent the entire WNBA into a whirlwind of uproar and disbelief. She didn't make some harmless remark, she flat out labeled the fans as toxic, a bold and unmistakable jab that many instantly took as a direct hit on Caitlin Clark's fiercely loyal and rapidly expanding fan base. And trust me, that single accusation sparked a firestorm of backlash throughout social media and every corner of the basketball world. This wasn't a slip of the tongue, nor was it an innocent mistake. It carried the weight of intent, sharp, deliberate, and impossible to ignore. Now the fans want explanations, they want accountability, and even more fiercely, they are calling for her swift and decisive removal as head coach of the Indiana Fever. Nobody expected the league to be thrown into such disarray, yet here we are, watching everyone scramble to comprehend how a head coach could so boldly alienate the very people who fuel the sport's explosive, history-making rise. This stunning and genuinely bewildering swipe at the fan base, the same supporters who have pushed the WNBA into national spotlight like never before, has rippled through every level of women's basketball, triggering a fierce storm of debate, frustration, and undeniable outrage that absolutely refuses to fade away.
Ignore the facts of what the other players in this league have done, from disrespecting fans, starting fake racial investigations, going on platform. I'm gonna give you the facts that Stephanie White wanted to leave out. This is nasty work. Welcome to Keep the Vision. Make sure you like, comment, subscribe, share the channel, hit that bell notification, and hype the video. Let's get right into things on a Sunday. Let's get into it. So, we had this article here. Obviously, Stephanie White was recently on Sue Bird's podcast, where she and...
What people need to recognize right away is that this situation didn't appear out of thin air. It's the result of a long, unmistakable buildup. For months, Stephanie White has consistently and openly minimized Caitlin Clark's massive importance to both the team and the league, repeatedly insisting, sometimes with striking emphasis, that Kelsey Mitchell remained the organization's true focal point. That narrative, as anyone paying even slight attention could see, collided directly with the undeniable truth that Clark's arrival completely reshaped everything: the Fever's visibility, the league's momentum, and the national spotlight, all while driving viewership numbers to heights never seen before in WNBA history. According to several people familiar with the inner dynamics, there's a growing belief that White didn't willingly shift her stance. She was pushed, even cornered, into finally admitting Clark's undeniable and central influence. Instead of sounding sincere, her acknowledgement came across like a begrudging compromise, a last-minute attempt to contain escalating fallout. The truth is, this friction has been quietly building for months, lingering beneath the surface like a slow-burning fuse. And with her latest reckless swipe at the fan base, that fuse has finally detonated, exploding the entire situation into a full-scale, unavoidable crisis.
Paige Bueckers did too, but they don't need to be a part of the Caitlin Clark conversation. Caitlin Clark is the reason for the boom in the WNBA, point blank, period. It's not because of no Angel Reese. It's not because of no Paige Bueckers. They were some of the lowest. They had some of the lowest attendance for their games throughout the entire season. So I don't know why they keep trying to lump them in with Caitlin Clark, but whatever. It's hard to imagine the WNBA players would get vastly increased salaries they're going to receive as part of a ratified CBA, or at least their salaries wouldn't have increased to the same degree. Now, we know they wouldn't be asking for all this money if it wasn't for...
So exactly how did this storm get started? The full transcript shows that White made these remarks during an appearance on Subbird's I View podcast, a notably high-profile platform. While her discussion was framed around the WNBA's explosive recent growth, the very surge we've been highlighting, she stated, and I quote, "I like to change the toxicity around our league." At first glance, that might sound like a well-meaning, even admirable statement. After all, who wouldn't want to reduce negativity? But here's the crucial nuance. When you consider the broader context of her words and the immediate, furious reactions from fans, it quickly became clear that the message came across as far more troubling and controversial than it might have seemed on its own. Astute fans quickly picked up on what was really happening, seeing through what they interpreted as a carefully disguised criticism. Almost immediately, it became clear that White's idea of toxicity conveniently ignored the very real, well-documented actions and missteps of certain players and even some organizational failings. Rather than confronting those internal problems head-on, she seemed to be deliberately placing all the blame squarely on the passionate supporters who, in reality, were simply exercising their right to speak out and share their opinions.
Now, you are ignoring the things that the players have done. These players have gone on. Arike Wnba was on ESPN during Caitlin Clark's rookie year, calling out fans saying, "We don't want you." We had people like Ryan Howard go at a post-game podium and disrespect A'ja Wilson fans because they showed up and cheered for A'ja Wilson at an Atlanta Dream game that was a home game for the Atlanta Dream. And she gets mad that people are cheering for A'ja Wilson at an Atlanta Dream game. So now hard-working fans.
The level of hypocrisy in all of this, according to countless observers and fans, is truly staggering. While Stephanie White boldly criticized toxic fans with relentless conviction, she noticeably turned a blind eye to a long list of player behaviors that have undeniably fueled controversy and negativity throughout the league for years. And we're not talking about minor disagreements here. These were highly public incidents, including players openly disrespecting fans, shocking allegations of staged racial investigations, and heated rivalries that unfolded across social media for the world to witness. These were never just isolated whispers hidden in locker rooms, they were very visible actions that left a lasting mark on the league's reputation. In fact, these were unmistakably high-profile incidents that directly fueled an already tense and often hostile environment around the league. Yet, remarkably, White has consistently failed to publicly address or condemn these very actions, prompting serious and entirely legitimate questions about her true motives and what she is really trying to achieve. The double standard here is glaring, undeniable, and absolutely impossible for anyone observing objectively to overlook or dismiss.
To go to a basketball game can't cheer for who they want to cheer for. So she's mad that she was disrespecting fans for cheering for A'ja Wilson, but in the same breath, we had Kalia Copper of the Phoenix Mercury get mad and call out fans for booing DeWanna Bonner, who left the Indiana Fever, who was on the opposing Phoenix Mercury team when they went to play in Indiana. So fans can't cheer for an A'ja Wilson on a road game, but they also can't boo an opposing player coming into their arena.
This raises a critical question. What power do fans really have? And more importantly, what actions have they already taken to make their voices heard? Let's rewind the clock to a period before Caitlin Clark even set foot on a WNBA court. Even then, the league was undeniably tangled in internal politics and simmering frustrations. Players like Angel Reese openly discussed, and even promoted, the idea of competing exclusively in alternative leagues, such as the widely talked about Unrivaled League. This was, without a doubt, a pointed critique of the WNBA structure and its widely perceived shortcomings. Soon after, players like Sada Sabali made bold public demands, calling out the league for unpaid compensation and even wearing protest shirts during the highly visible All-Star break. These were far from minor complaints, they were very public, unmistakable signs of deep-rooted issues existing both within the player community and the league's own infrastructure. All of this unfolded long before the so-called toxic fans, many now passionately supporting Caitlin Clark, began to voice their opinions. When you step back and look at the full picture, the narrative blaming fans for chaos is not just misleading, it is a clear misrepresentation of reality. Fans have been constantly attacked, accused of racism, and disparaged online. Black fans of Caitlin Clark, for instance, have faced derogatory slurs and ridicule. Meanwhile, players' own actions that contribute to negativity are rarely addressed. Even high-profile incidents, like Nafisa Collier being removed from a game, go largely unquestioned in terms of accountability. Now, it's time to cut through the noise and get down to the brass tacks. This raises a critical question: what power do fans really have, and more importantly, what actions have they already taken to make their voices heard? Let's rewind the clock to a period before Caitlin Clark even set foot on a WNBA court. Even then, the league was undeniably tangled in internal politics and simmering frustrations. Players like Angel Reese openly discussed, and even promoted, the idea of competing exclusively in alternative leagues, such as the widely talked about Unrivaled League. This was, without a doubt, a pointed critique of the WNBA structure and its widely perceived shortcomings. Soon after, players like Sada Sabaly made bold public demands, calling out the league for unpaid compensation and even wearing protest shirts during the highly visible All-Star break. These were far from minor complaints; they were very public, unmistakable signs of deep-rooted issues existing both within the player community and the league's own infrastructure. All of this unfolded long before the so-called toxic fans, many now passionately supporting Caitlin Clark, began to voice their opinions. When you step back and look at the full picture, the narrative blaming fans for chaos is not just misleading, it is a clear misrepresentation of reality. Fans have been constantly attacked, accused of racism, and disparaged online. Black fans of Caitlin Clark, for instance, have faced derogatory slurs and ridicule. Meanwhile, players' own actions that contribute to negativity are rarely addressed. Even high-profile incidents, like Nafisa Collier being removed from a game, go largely unquestioned in terms of accountability. Now, it's time to cut through the noise and get down to the brass tacks. The explosive surge in the WNBA's popularity over recent months can be traced almost entirely to the undeniable magnetism and influence of Caitlin Clark. This isn't opinion, it's a measurable, concrete reality. Yet, despite this glaring fact, there continue to be constant, often transparent attempts to minimize her singular impact. How is this done? By loosely grouping other notable players like Angel Reese and Paige Bueckers into the conversation, even though their teams consistently rank near the bottom in attendance and viewership. This near-strategic downplaying of Clark's transformative role, even as the league and individual franchises rely on her incredible star power to sell tickets and boost ratings, creates a deep sense of frustration among fans. It's a bitter pill to swallow for those who watch their favorite players' achievements repeatedly diminished while others seemingly ride her coattails, basking in reflected glory. This frustrating dynamic, make no mistake, is a major contributor to the so-called toxicity Stephanie White now condemns, but it stems squarely from organizational actions, not the fans. Teams like the Indiana Fever repeatedly misrepresented Clark's health, hiding injuries while simultaneously promoting her as game-ready day-to-day, all to drive ticket sales. Does anyone think that didn't play a role in the tension? Meanwhile, many players have publicly disrespected fans, taking advantage of the money, attention, and fandom Clark has brought to the league to benefit themselves. The narrative that pins all the blame on supporters is not only misleading, it completely ignores the root causes. So, what exactly are we examining here? Let's break it down, because the financial implications are impossible to ignore. The WNBA's recent, record-breaking surge in popularity, driven almost entirely by Caitlin Clark, is directly responsible for the substantial salary increases players are set to receive under the new collective bargaining agreement. Let me be perfectly clear, without her, these life-changing pay raises likely would never have reached this magnitude, if they happened at all. That is an unvarnished, undeniable reality. Yet, it's a truth that many within the league, players, coaches, and officials alike, appear unwilling, or perhaps even hesitant, to openly recognize. This creates a troubling disconnect between those reaping the financial rewards and the actual catalyst behind it all, the passionate, newly engaged fan base Clark has brought into the league. To then criticize or attack those very fans, who have invested their time, money, and passion, amounts to a deliberate slap in the face. The narrative that frames fans as the problem is both misleading and infuriating. If toxicity is to be called out, it must be done holistically, highlight every instance of misconduct, fake racial investigations, and player disrespect, not just Caitlin Clark's supporters. This is exactly why I firmly believe Stephanie White should be removed from her position. I stand by that conviction, and I encourage everyone to voice their thoughts in the comments. Share your perspective, like, and subscribe. Let this discussion be seen and heard. The controversy escalated to a boiling point when fans began documenting specific, undeniable examples of player disrespect that White failed to address. Consider Raquel Williams of the Las Vegas Aces. During Clark's rookie season, she appeared on ESPN and openly declared on national television, "We don't want you." Moments like this illustrate the real issues at hand, and fans will not let them be ignored. This was a clear, unambiguous, and deeply hostile message directed at new fans, many of whom had been drawn to the league specifically because of Caitlin Clark. Such open animosity from players toward an enthusiastic and growing fan base is exactly the type of toxicity Stephanie White should have confronted directly, yet she chose to ignore it. Instead, her criticism was aimed squarely at the very supporters who simply want to enjoy the game and passionately cheer for their favorite athletes. The hypocrisy here is truly staggering. Then there was Ryan Howard of the Atlanta Dream, who openly disrespected fans of A.J. Wilson, a star player, simply for supporting their favorite athlete during a home game. Imagine that, fans paying their hard-earned money to attend a professional game being effectively told they couldn't cheer for who they wanted. This wasn't an isolated, one-off incident, it was a brazen display of what many saw as player entitlement and a total disregard for the paying audience, the lifeblood of any professional sport. Such behavior directly cultivates a negative, unwelcoming atmosphere. Yet White stayed conspicuously silent about these specific incidents while readily condemning fan reactions. The double standard persisted with Kalani Brown of the Phoenix Mercury. When Johnny Carrington, a former Indiana Fever player, returned to Indianapolis with the opposing team, fans naturally booed her, a normal, long-standing practice in sports. Brown then publicly criticized the fans for their reaction. So let's be clear, the focus keeps shifting unfairly onto supporters, while the actions of the players themselves go unchecked. Fans can't cheer for an opposing star like A.J. Wilson on the road, nor can they boo a former player who left their team without being instantly labeled toxic or disrespectful. So what exactly are supporters supposed to do? This contradictory, confusing, and frankly arrogant gatekeeping by certain players only fuels friction, resentment, and division within the WNBA community. And this isn't just about isolated fan-player conflicts, it gets far darker. Black fans of Caitlin Clark, including the content creator who bravely exposed Stephanie White's comments, have been subjected to vile and racially charged attacks, even being derogatorily called raccoons by individuals within the league itself. This targeted abuse from inside the WNBA points to a far deeper, insidious, and frankly terrifying form of toxicity that White and others have conveniently ignored. It's a shocking reality that fans who merely support a player are sometimes met with racialized, hostile treatment from those they admire. Meanwhile, the narrative pushed by the WNBA establishment and some players insists that fans are the problem. But the facts tell a very different story. It was the players who made Caitlin Clark the most flagrantly fouled athlete in the entire league, a damning statistic that underscores the aggressive and often unpenalized treatment she faced on the court. This behavior directly contributed to the justified outrage from fans, who rightly questioned the officiating and the repeated targeting of a star player. To blame the fans for responding to such blatant unfairness, or for pointing out obvious double standards, is a deliberate deflection of responsibility. And if we look further, the Indiana Fever organization itself cannot escape scrutiny in this ongoing pattern. Under Stephanie White's leadership, the team engaged in highly questionable practices regarding Caitlin Clark's health. Allegations surfaced that the organization repeatedly lied about and concealed her injuries for months, all while continuing to play her in order to sell tickets and maximize profits, potentially at her personal risk. Conflicting injury reports from the same team left fans feeling frustrated, misled, and exploited, fueling widespread anger and distrust. This institutional deception undeniably contributed to the growing negativity surrounding the league, yet it was conveniently ignored in White's sweeping condemnation of so-called toxic fans. Put in a broader perspective, the WNBA is currently negotiating its next collective bargaining agreement, with players' salaries at the forefront of discussion. The unprecedented surge in popularity, driven almost entirely by Caitlin Clark, is the only reason players now have leverage to demand dramatically higher pay. Publicly attacking the very fans responsible for creating this opportunity, while simultaneously benefiting from their dedication, passion, and financial investment, reveals a striking lack of self-awareness, gratitude, and strategic foresight. It is a dangerously short-sighted approach that risks alienating the golden goose currently fueling the league's growth. At its core, the argument against Stephanie White's stance is remarkably straightforward, and it boils down to this simple truth. If the WNBA truly wants to confront toxicity, it must tackle the full spectrum of issues head-on. That means holding players accountable for initiating fake racial investigations, disrespecting fans at home games, booing former teammates, or disparaging new and vital audience segments. It means demanding transparency and responsibility from organizations that mislead the public about injuries, compromise player health, and treat athletes as mere ticket-selling commodities rather than essential assets. Selective outrage, targeting only one group, the fans, is not a solution, it is a major part of the problem itself. The league currently sits at a pivotal crossroads, enjoying unprecedented growth while simultaneously struggling with internal tension and deep divisions. Online discourse around players, teams, and rivalries, particularly between Caitlin Clark and Angel Reese, has undeniably fueled nastiness and tribalism. Yet White's approach, isolating and blaming the fans, fails completely to address the real issues and only intensifies existing rifts. Her misguided comments have turned a historic moment of opportunity into a cauldron of frustration, alienating the very supporters essential for long-term success. Instead of cultivating an inclusive, welcoming environment, White has drawn a stark, divisive line in the sand, signaling to a significant, passionate portion of the fan base that their enthusiasm, loyalty, and energy are unwelcome. This, friends, is not how you build a thriving, resilient league. It is exactly how you risk driving away the very investment, passion, and excitement that sustain it. What the WNBA desperately needs right now is unity, not further division. The league requires leadership, and that includes coaches, who have the courage to recognize problems from every angle, not just those that are politically convenient or easy to criticize. Stephanie White's actions have undeniably placed a glaring target on the league's most loyal and rapidly growing fan base. Calls for her removal are not merely born of frustration or anger, they are rooted in the essential demand for accountability. When a coach publicly undermines the league's brightest star and alienates her passionate supporters, it directly harms the organization and its long-term prospects. Such divisive behavior does nothing to foster a healthy team environment or support a sustainable business model. Fans have every right to expect that leaders reflect core values like fairness, transparency, and respect for every contributor to the league's success, including, crucially, the paying audience. The toxic label, now weaponized against those who highlight systemic issues, is a convenient but deeply cynical tactic to silence legitimate criticism and deflect uncomfortable truths. Fans are not the problem, they are the lifeblood of the league. Fans are not the problem, they are simply holding up a mirror to the league, reflecting what they see: unfair treatment, glaring player double standards, and organizational missteps that cannot be ignored. To dismiss these legitimate concerns as toxicity is to willfully ignore the truth and perpetuate the very problems that threaten the long-term health and growth of the WNBA. The real toxicity, it seems, lies in the stubborn refusal to acknowledge internal failings while shifting blame onto the supporters who keep the league alive. Stephanie White's divisive comments on toxicity have done more than spark outrage. They have exposed deep, systemic fissures within the WNBA, forcing the league to confront a stark and critical choice. Will it fully embrace its new, diverse, and incredibly vocal fan base, listen to their legitimate concerns, and act with transparency and fairness? Or will it continue down a path of selective blame, ignoring internal issues and alienating the very people who have fueled its unprecedented growth? The future of women's professional basketball hangs in the balance, and this is a defining moment where fans refuse to remain passive. They demand accountability, respect, and genuine inclusion at every level of the game. If you stand with fans calling for real change, make your voice heard, like this video, subscribe for ongoing updates, and join the conversation in the comments. The league is watching, and together, we can ensure that accountability and fairness lead the way forward.